Hey guys, I'm Joel with North Country Vans, and we're done. Well, almost done. I dropped a light installing it the other day, so I'm just waiting on that, but otherwise we are completed. So we got the walls in, the ceiling, and we got all the plumbing, the sink mounted. So let me show you around. All right, so to start out, we have our sink mounted, and we are using a Whale Gusher foot operated water pump. And that pump operates when you push down, it pumps, and then when it returns by a spring, it pumps again. So it's actually a nice smooth operation, and it's really good on conserving water. A pump system, you turn on the tap, you let it run for a second, and you put soap in your hands, and then you end up wasting a little more water than you want to. So a foot operated pump or even a foot operated valve will help you conserve water, especially if you have a small system. And so in here we have our 5-gallon fresh water tank, a 5-gallon gray water tank for our waste. To get the water from the bottom of the tank here, we had to build a standpipe. And so what it is, it's 1/2-inch copper, and then it necks up to 3/4 inch. And then in there is a bushing, and that bushing has a little shoulder that I was able to use a Dremel tool and file out. So we were able to get that 1/2-inch pipe to slide through that bushing down to the bottom of the tank. So that might be a good option for you guys who are building a system like this. The next thing is we put unions in. So these are PVC unions with rubber O-rings in them, and that will allow you to open it up and then move that tank out of the way. So you can take it out and go fill it back up. When I cut in the sink, I saved the piece of countertop I removed, and I was able to make a shoulder on it, so that way it sits into the sink, can be used as a cutting board, and fills in that space for a little more counter room. So we got all the lights installed with the exception of the one I broke, but we went with a 12-volt DC recessed can light, and I went with 6 of them in a pretty small van. And the reason why is I really like to have a lot of lights on a dimmer, so that way in the evenings I can keep it at a pretty low level but still have good dispersion so I can see everything that I need to see. And then during the day when it's extremely bright outside, I can keep those at the highest level so my eyes don't really have to adjust as I'm going inside and outside of the van. So we use a 12-volt dimmer, and I don't know if this will show up on the video, but when you dim these down, if you notice there's little lines across the screen. And the reason for that is these are actually pulse width modulation dimmers. So basically what it does is the lights are on at 100%, but it shuts them off and turns it back on in milliseconds, pulsations, so that your perceived light level is much lower. It pulls a lot less amperage, so when I have these lights all the way down, I'm pulling about 2 amps. Once I have all 6 of them installed, I'll be running about 3.5 amps. So it can conserve a lot of power. That line that you may or may not notice, you don't see that with your eye. The only time you're really going to pick it up is if you move your hand really fast when they're dimmed down, because it's pulsations, almost like wheels turning in a movie. You're just going to get little catches of the spokes. The same with your hand. You'll kind of like, it's hard to describe, but it'll look like you're moving stuttery. So interesting stuff. For the walls and the ceiling, I use 1/4 inch knotty cedar planking. It's a nickel gap, so like you think of shiplap, that's actually kind of coming together like so. Nickel gap comes together like so, so it gives it a little bit more rigidity between the planks. And I really like using it. It smelled wonderful when I cut it, and it allowed me, because the planks were only 3.5 inches wide, it allowed me to get pretty precise on all of my angles as I conformed the indentations of the van. If you guys remember, behind this wall are 3/4 inch furring strips, and we did that all throughout the van, and that allowed us to maximize that space and conform to the curvature of the van walls. And it's all insulated behind there. But yeah, I think it turned out pretty good. And it just has a polyurethane coating on it. And you can see where we were dealing with a lot of different angles. as we came around those curvatures. But it looks pretty good. For the ceiling, we actually made a flat assembly for the ceiling. And the reason why on these transits, they're pretty tall anyways. I'm 6 foot. The gal who's going to be living in here is quite a bit smaller than me, so she didn't mind wasting a little bit of space up here, and that allowed us to insulate it a little better, really where you want your insulation as heat rises, so the more you have in your ceiling, the better. The last thing is, if you notice along the back pillars there, that is all carpet, and that's what I have found to be the best to finish off some of those tougher areas that you really can't nail anything to, but you don't want to really leave it as just bare steel. And the same with around the headliner, where we're going to have our cargo netting that stretches between these two boards to give you a little additional storage up there. So it feels really good to have this completed. She's going to be coming in a little while to pick it up. So on to the next project, and we have 2, and I'll introduce those to you shortly. We'll see you.